Every interaction you have is simultaneously an interrogation you don't realize you're participating in. The colleague who asks about your weekend plans isn't making small talk, but collecting data points about your priorities and vulnerabilities. The friend who notices your slight hesitation before answering isn't being perceptive, but conducting psychological reconnaissance. They're mapping your emotional landscape, cataloging your triggers, and filing away every micro-expression for future use. This isn't paranoia speaking, but the brutal reality of human social dynamics that most people refuse to acknowledge. We live in a world where information asymmetry determines who holds power, and every authentic moment you share is intelligence freely given to those who may eventually use it against you. Machiavelli understood this fundamental truth 5 centuries before modern psychology confirmed it. His most overlooked principle wasn't about acquiring power, but about preserving it through strategic opacity. The moment someone can predict your emotional responses, anticipate your decisions, or map your psychological patterns, you cease to be a player in the game of influence and become merely a piece to be moved by others. This isn't about becoming cold or manipulative, but about recognizing that in a world where everyone is unconsciously gathering psychological data, your survival depends on controlling the flow of information about your inner world. Today we'll explore how mastering the art of strategic inscrutability isn't just a tool for dominance, but a necessity for maintaining autonomy in an age where transparency has become a weapon disguised as virtue. Section 1. The Art of Emotional Invisibility. Your emotions are broadcasting your deepest secrets to anyone paying attention. Every frown when someone mentions your ex reveals unhealed wounds they can exploit later. Every excited reaction to praise shows them exactly which buttons to push when they need something from you. Every flash of anger when criticized tells them precisely where your insecurities live. Most people treat their emotional responses like background noise, completely unaware that others are reading these reactions like a psychological manual. The person who notices you get defensive about your work habits now knows how to undermine your confidence in meetings. The colleague who sees you light up when discussing your weekend plans understands what motivates you and what you value most. They're not trying to hurt you necessarily, but they're unconsciously collecting information that gives them leverage over your behavior. When you react emotionally to every stimulus, you're essentially handing out free psychological profiles to everyone around you. The solution isn't to become cold or robotic, but to recognize that emotional transparency is a luxury you can't afford if you want to maintain any real power in your relationships. Emotional stillness operates on a completely different level than the suppression most people attempt when trying to control their reactions. Suppression creates internal pressure that eventually explodes in unpredictable ways, giving others even more information about your psychological state. True emotional stillness comes from understanding that your first emotional response is information, not instruction. When someone insults you, that flash of hurt or anger is data about what matters to you, but it doesn't require immediate expression or action. You can feel the emotion fully while choosing not to broadcast it through your facial expressions, body language, or verbal responses. This creates a powerful psychological advantage because people expect emotional reactions to follow predictable patterns. When you break those patterns by remaining calm during situations that would typically trigger visible responses, you force others to recalibrate their understanding of you. They start to question whether their usual tactics will work, whether they can predict your behavior, or whether they understand you at all. This uncertainty makes them more cautious around you and less likely to attempt manipulation or exploitation. Most people operate from such predictable psychological scripts that manipulating them requires almost no effort or creativity. They get defensive when criticized, grateful when complimented, eager when flattered, and withdrawn when ignored. These responses are so automatic that experienced manipulators can trigger them like pressing buttons on a machine. Breaking these predictable patterns requires conscious disruption of your own automatic responses. When someone expects you to argue back, you can agree with them in a way that makes them uncomfortable. When they expect gratitude for a compliment, you can simply acknowledge it without the emotional response they're fishing for. When they expect you to chase their approval after being ignored, you can become even more distant and self-contained. The goal isn't to be contrary for its own sake, but to prevent others from developing reliable maps of your psychology. When people can't predict how you'll respond to their actions, they lose the ability to control those responses for their own benefit. This unpredictability becomes a form of psychological armor that protects you from common manipulation tactics, while forcing others to treat you with more respect and caution. If you don't actively shape how others perceive you, they'll create their own version of who you are based on limited observations and their own psychological projections. This invented version of you will rarely work in your favor because most people interpret ambiguous behavior through the lens of their own fears, insecurities, and past experiences. The quiet person becomes labeled as unfriendly or arrogant. The helpful person gets tagged as a pushover or people pleaser. The confident person gets branded as cocky or intimidating. Once these labels stick, they become self-fulfilling prophecies as people treat you according to their invented narrative rather than your actual character. Controlling your narrative requires deliberate curation of the information you allow others to access about you. This doesn't mean lying or creating a false persona, but rather being selective about which aspects of your personality you reveal in different contexts. You can be warm and approachable while maintaining clear boundaries about personal information. You can be helpful and supportive without becoming the person everyone dumps their problems on. You can be confident and decisive without revealing the full extent of your capabilities or ambitions. The key is giving people enough information to form a positive but incomplete impression, while keeping the most important aspects of your psychology private and protected. The difference between being kind and being nice represents one of the most crucial distinctions in human psychology and power dynamics. Niceness is often a performance driven by the need for approval, acceptance, or conflict avoidance. It's reactive, predictable, and frequently manipulated by those who recognize the desperation behind it. Kind people who are always nice become emotional dumping grounds, free labor sources, and convenient scapegoats because their predictable desire to help others overrides their ability to protect their own interests. Strategic kindness operates from a position of strength rather than need. You choose when to be generous, helpful, or accommodating based on whether those actions serve your larger goals or genuinely benefit people you care about. This doesn't mean being cruel or selfish, but rather ensuring that your positive actions come from authentic choice rather than psychological compulsion. When your kindness is selective and thoughtful rather than automatic and universal, it carries more weight and commands more respect. People value what they can't take for granted, and kindness that must be earned is far more powerful than kindness that's freely given to everyone regardless of their behavior or intentions. Strategic revelation represents perhaps the most sophisticated form of psychological self-defense, because it allows you to appear open and authentic while maintaining complete control over what others actually know about you. Most people confuse being known with being understood, but these are entirely different concepts. You can share stories, opinions, preferences, and experiences while keeping your core motivations, deepest fears, true capabilities, and long-term plans completely private. This creates the illusion of intimacy and connection without the vulnerability that comes from genuine exposure. People feel like they know you because they have access to surface-level information about your life, but they remain completely unable to predict your behavior in crucial moments because they don't understand the deeper psychological forces that drive your decisions. This technique is particularly powerful because it satisfies people's desire to feel connected to you while protecting the information that could be used to manipulate or control you. You become simultaneously accessible and unreachable, familiar and mysterious, open and completely protected. The result is that people trust you because they feel like they know you, but they can't exploit you because they don't actually understand how your mind works. When you master the art of strategic psychological invisibility, you stop being a target and start becoming a force that others must account for in their own strategic calculations. People can't attack what they can't accurately map, can't manipulate what they can't predict, and can't control what they don't understand. Your emotional responses become tools rather than liabilities. Your kindness becomes a choice rather than a compulsion, and your relationships become partnerships rather than power struggles. The most powerful position in any social dynamic is the one where others need to consider your potential reactions without being able to predict them with certainty. This creates a psychological environment where people treat you with more respect, give you more space to operate, and think twice before attempting to use you for their own purposes. You become the unknown variable in every equation, the person whose response could change everything. and therefore the person who must be approached with caution and genuine consideration. But mastering emotional invisibility is only the beginning of true psychological protection, because there are advanced techniques that can make you not just unreadable, but completely untouchable. Section 2. Social camouflage. Social camouflage works differently than people think it does. Most people try to blend in by copying everything about the people around them. But this approach creates its own problems because total conformity makes you forgettable and powerless. The real skill is learning to fit in just enough that people don't see you as a threat, while keeping the parts of yourself that matter completely separate from their understanding. You can laugh at their jokes without sharing their sense of humor. You can participate in their conversations without revealing your actual opinions. You can dress like them, speak their language, and follow their social rules while maintaining a completely different internal reality. This technique protects you because people naturally trust what feels familiar, but it also gives you tremendous freedom because they're not actually monitoring the real you. They're watching a version of you that's designed to make them comfortable, which means they never develop the psychological tools needed to read, predict, or control your actual behavior. The goal isn't to become fake, but to become selectively authentic, showing people only the parts of yourself that serve your purposes while keeping everything else safely hidden behind a mask of acceptable normalcy. Ambiguity becomes a weapon when you understand that most people's minds crave certainty and clear categories. When someone asks you a direct question designed to pin you down or extract information you don't want to share, your refusal to provide a clear answer creates psychological discomfort that works in your favor. Instead of saying yes or no, you can respond with questions that turn the focus back on them. Instead of agreeing or disagreeing with controversial statements, you can acknowledge multiple perspectives without taking a side. Instead of committing to specific plans or positions, you can speak in general terms that sound meaningful but reveal nothing concrete. This approach frustrates people who are trying to map your psychology because they can't place you in neat mental categories. Are you liberal or conservative? Aggressive or passive? Confident or insecure? When they can't answer these questions, they become uncertain about how to approach you, what tactics will work on you, or how you might respond to their actions. This uncertainty makes them more careful around you and less likely to attempt manipulation, because they don't have reliable information about what will trigger the responses they want from you. Breaking your own established patterns at strategic moments serves as a psychological reset button that forces others to question everything they thought they understood about you. If you've been consistently calm and measured in your responses, occasionally showing a flash of intensity or passion makes people wonder what else they might have missed about your personality. If you're usually serious and focused, moments of unexpected humor or playfulness can completely shift how others perceive your character and capabilities. If you typically maintain distance in relationships, brief periods of warmth or vulnerability can make people feel specially chosen while still keeping them uncertain about where they actually stand with you. The timing of these pattern breaks matters enormously because they need to feel spontaneous and authentic rather than calculated or manipulative. When done correctly, these disruptions prevent people from developing reliable mental models of who you are and how you operate. Just when they think they've figured out your personality, your capabilities, or your likely responses to different situations, you reveal a completely different aspect of yourself that forces them to recalibrate their entire understanding. This keeps them psychologically off balance and ensures that their attempts to predict, influence, or control you will be based on incomplete and potentially inaccurate information. But even the most sophisticated camouflage techniques are useless if you don't understand the psychological principles that make people want to unmask you in the first place. Section 3. Mastering the invisible game. Silence creates a psychological vacuum that most people desperately rush to fill with information about themselves. When you ask someone a question and then wait without speaking, they'll often reveal far more than they intended just to escape the discomfort of quiet space. When you don't immediately respond to accusations or challenges, people will keep talking and usually end up contradicting themselves or exposing their real motivations. The key is understanding that silence isn't passive, but active psychological pressure that forces others to show their cards first. Most people can't tolerate more than a few seconds of quiet in conversation because they interpret silence as judgment, rejection, or disagreement. This discomfort drives them to over-explain, justify their positions, or share personal information they wouldn't normally reveal just to get some kind of response from you. While they're filling the silence with increasingly desperate attempts at connection or explanation, you're gathering intelligence about their insecurities, their priorities, their fears, and their actual agenda. The person who speaks first in a negotiation usually loses because they reveal what they want before understanding what the other person is willing to give. The person who reacts first to conflict usually loses because they show their emotional triggers before seeing how far the other person is willing to push. Silence gives you the strategic advantage of collecting information while revealing nothing about your own psychological state or intentions. True internal containment goes beyond controlling your external reactions to include managing the information that exists inside your own mind. Most people think about their plans, goals, fears, and desires so carelessly that these thoughts leak out through their behavior, word choices, and unconscious habits. Real psychological security requires you to treat your internal reality like classified information that must be compartmentalized and protected even from yourself in certain situations. This means not rehearsing important conversations out loud where others might overhear, not writing down sensitive plans or feelings where they might be discovered, and not even thinking about certain topics when you're around people who might pick up on subtle changes in your demeanor or energy. When you're planning something important, you think about it only when you're completely alone and safe from observation. When you're dealing with strong emotions about someone, you process those feelings privately rather than letting them influence how you interact with that person or others who might carry information back to them. This level of internal discipline prevents information leaks that happen below the level of conscious awareness, like the slight change in your voice when you mention someone you dislike, or the way your body language shifts when discussing topics that make you uncomfortable. Internal containment means your secrets are safe even from your own unconscious habits and automatic responses. People's minds automatically try to complete incomplete patterns, so they'll spend mental energy trying to figure out what you really meant, what you're actually planning, or what you know that they don't. Meanwhile, their attempts to get more information often lead them to reveal their own thoughts, concerns, and agendas as they try different approaches to getting you to open up. The power of incomplete communication is that it makes you seem mysterious and knowledgeable while actually requiring you to share almost nothing about your real thoughts, plans, or capabilities. In a world where everyone broadcasts their every thought and feeling, the person who remains genuinely unknowable doesn't just survive, but becomes the gravitational center around which all other personalities must orbit.